please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
The BMW X1, which came out last year, is now in its second generation. And when we compared it to the GLA and the Q3, it was victorious. And that is thanks to its more spacious cabin, its better kit. That also reflects in its sales figures because it is clearly leading the charts by a big margin. But will it continue to do so? Will it continue to lead? Because now it has a very serious contender, the Volvo XC40.
Volvo has started to become more of an SUV brand now, and this is clearly a good time to earn that reputation. The XC40 is their third SUV offering, but it sits on a new, low-cost modular platform called the Compact Modular Architecture or CMA, which it shares with its Chinese parent Geely. Its design highlights are the Thor's hammer lights, the dual-tone color scheme, an upright stance, and the radical designs for its wheels. The XC40 is Volvo's smallest offering, but it is larger certainly than the GLA and also the Q3 and comparable in size to the new X1. The BMW X1 is marginally longer. While the boxier form of the XC40 gives it stronger credentials for SUV styling, the X1's sculpted lines and sleek form make the BMW appear more athletic. The M Sport trim seen here dials up the oomph factor further with its sportier bodywork and lowered stance that comes courtesy of the M suspension. The cabins could make it easier though, for inside is where the difference is quite stark.
The X1's cabin is typical BMW in its fit and finish, in its design. It's got a driver-centric profile for the dashboard. It's quite a slim profile. What's not typical BMW is the gear shifter, and that's down to the platform sharing that this car has with the Mini. But all the controls fall easily at hand. They're ergonomic. The infotainment, the UI is easy to use, but this infotainment is a little laggy as compared to the other infotainment systems that you'll see in different BMW cars in the showroom. It does support BMW's native apps. It also has support for Apple CarPlay, but if you belong to any other ecosystem, sorry, no Android love for you in here. This car also gets a heads-up display, which reminds you that BMWs are the ones that are more driver-focused. And to that effect, you also get adjustable bolstering on the front seats. Unfortunately though, you cannot set the lumbar support.
Speaking of the boot though, the Volvo XC40's boot offers more versatility with its quirky permutations and combinations, but if it is outright cargo space that you need, the X1 leads the class. The XC40's trump card is the aesthetics department.
The XC40's cabin has a sense of occasion to it. The bright magma-colored four-wool carpeting or the different textures that have been used in the cabin, it's all so nice. The quality of materials used, it's on par with what you have in the BMW X1. And the infotainment, the user interface is very easy to use, very easy to learn. But if I were to use it, I would rather prefer the infotainment that you get in the X1, primarily because it has a rotary dial, which means that I don't have to take my eyes off the road when I'm operating it. And to that effect, the infotainment screen sits quite high up on the dashboard. But if you're an audiophile, you simply can't ignore the superior audio quality that the cabin of the XC40 offers. If you're a driving enthusiast, chances are that you will first look at the BMW X1 when you're making your buying decision in this category. And you will also notice that the lower-end trims come with the S-Drive suffix, which points towards the front-wheel driven architecture of the car. Now when you start pushing that car around the bends, you do get that understeery nature. So if you want better driving dynamics, what you want is the M Sport trim, because this is the only one in the lineup that currently gets the X-Drive all-wheel drive system. And the beauty of that all-wheel drive system is that it provides or feeds most of the power to the rear wheels, and it's only when it detects slip that power is given to the front wheels. Feeding 190 PS of power and 400 Newton meters of torque to this drivetrain is BMW's humble 2-litre 4-cylinder diesel engine that has a lovely mid-range pull and a linear acceleration that doesn't overwhelm the driver. I really like this 2-litre engine that powers most of the cars in BMW's lineup. In the X1, however, because it's transversely mounted, it gets the Aisin 8-speed gearbox, whereas the longitudinally mounted variants get the ZF transmission. Now, when you're driving this car in the city or cruising out on the highway, this gearbox feels quite telepathic. But it's only when you start pushing the car hard around bends, around the twisties, when you really want that driving fun, that is where the difference between this gearbox and the telepathic nature of the ZF gets highlighted. Otherwise, it just feels as nice to drive. Now the M Sport trim also comes with larger wheels and a slightly stiffer suspension setup, and this is where things get tricky. That stiffer setup also means that when you're driving on potholed roads like I'm driving right now, the ride can get quite bone jarring. There are a lot of thuds creeping into the cabin, everything starts creaking around. But when you get smooth roads, the car feels nice and planted. When you get nice corners, the car feels flat through all of it. So that's a lot of driving fun. So the gamble here is, if you want a softer ride, if you want a more plush ride, you have to settle for the lower trims because that is what is going to give you the softer setup. But that also means ES drive trims which are not as much fun to drive. So you can either have the comfort or you can have the driving fun. Not that difficult for me to choose really. I'll go with the M Sport. But quite frankly, that choice isn't that easy, especially when you drive the Volvo XC40 right after the BMW X1. It's surprising how good this car is to drive and how close it comes to the BMW in terms of driving fun and handling dynamics. I mean, we drove the X3 recently, which is a benchmark in itself for handling in that particular segment. We compared it to the XC60, and the XC60 felt so heavy through the corners. There was so much understeer when you start pushing it hard. This car doesn't feel like that at all. The stark difference that you had between the X3 and the XC60. Volvos aren't even close to being driver's cars, but the XC40 breaks that stereotype. It certainly isn't a benchmark, but it is a fun-to-drive car for the kind of segment that it caters to. Like the Beamer, Volvo's 2-litre engine too is quite humble, but impresses in the city, on the highway and even around the twisties. So the same family of the gearbox that does duty in the X1 does duty in the XC40 as well. So the characteristics more or less remain the same, and the best way to enjoy it is with the paddle shifters. Where the XC40 truly impresses is in the way it balances a supple ride quality with a flat ride through corners. Indian roads aren't a big worry for this car as long as you do not opt for the low-profile tyres, and the suspension handles corners pretty well too. As compared to the X1 X-Drive, there is a hint of understeer when you push the XC40 hard. So it's safe to say that the Haldex AWD on the XC40 isn't as fun-biased as the X1's X-Drive. But it is certainly on par in terms of safety and overall grip. And this fine balance of ride and dynamics is what helps the XC40 score more points in my books. And when you speak of points, the choice between these two cars becomes much simpler. The BMW X1 is excellent as always and leaves very little room for complaint. But the XC40 just does most of the things a little bit better and finally amasses more points than the X1 to become a clear winner of this test.